and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 249, and today's date is December 27, 2013, and the title of this episode is DHS is bringing in terrorists by the busload. And before we get into the report and the economic collapse news, I just want to remind everyone that this Sunday, which is December 29th, I'll be posting the interview with Dave Hodges. He's from the Common Sense Show. He has the site commonsenseshow.com. He writes a lot of articles, and I'm sure most of you have read his articles. And this is an interview I did with him. It has to do with the upcoming false flag, FEMA camps, war, and it is a really great discussion, and it's around 50 minutes or so, and it was a really great interview. And let's get into the economic collapse news right now. We are seeing all throughout Europe and Greece and Cyprus that they are having a very difficult holiday retail season, and this is because of high unemployment, high underemployment, and I guess the government officials don't realize that the economies are collapsing. And what happened was all these retail stores, the car dealerships, bought into the propaganda and the illusion that the economy was recovering. So what did they end up doing? They ordered tons of merchandise. Dealerships packed their dealers with 80 days worth of inventory on their lots. Retail stores packed their warehouses, packed their stores with merchandise, and they can't get rid of it. The after Christmas sale began on Christmas, and Amazon and other retailers were slashing prices 40, 50, 75%, buy one, get one. And if you actually go into a lot of these stores, the shelves are completely full. There is nothing wiped out, nothing at all like that. And I was in a store today, and not many people buying. In my area, I mean, people looking around, they're buying wrapping paper for next year, which was like $1 because of the steep discounts. But otherwise, the shelves were full, and they are scrambling right now because they realize what has happened. And the only explanation for this, and the only one I can figure out, is high unemployment, no disposable income, high underemployment, and the BLS, the Fed information, is all BS. It's all an illusion. The unemployment, the GDP, inflation, all of this is fake. They created a fake environment, and the people who are not awake, who are just all believing this, they've fallen into the trap, and they absolutely believe that the economy is recovering right now. And I have to say that people actually believe that the real estate market is completely recovering at this time. And what we're going to see is that everything is going to start falling apart. And it's going to be one little thing after another before the entire system comes crumbling down. Now, we understand that 1.3 million people are going to fall off of the unemployment figures, and this is going to lower their unemployment rate because the unemployment extension for benefits comes to an end tomorrow, actually, the 28th of December, and the Congress was not out there to extend this period of time. So what happens is they're going to fall off of unemployment. Unemployment is going to come down, and now the Fed is going to sit there and look at it and say, oh, we've reached our targets, we're number-based, and now we can do full-on tapering, which they're never going to do, which they're going to increase because the market is not going to be able to withstand the problems that are going to appear out of nowhere. Now, Congress understands that there's 1.3 million people who are not going to be getting their unemployment benefits. So Nevada Senator Dean Heller has raised eyebrows among his Republican colleagues by putting his name to a bill to extend unemployment benefits. And this is going to happen sometime in January. When in January? They're saying early January. They're saying January 6th. They're going to bring this up. And what's going to happen is the new unemployment numbers are going to come out. They're going to recalculate them. These people are going to be off of off of the count, and the unemployment is going to come down. And this is going to be set up perfectly for the next false flag event, which I've talked about numerous times in my reports. And if you haven't heard about this, just go backwards in time and you can listen to what I say about what is about to happen. Now, if real estate is bouncing back and this recovery is a recovery like we've never seen, unemployment has dropped 7%. Obama was out there in August saying that housing is making this incredible rebound. Biden is out there on campaign letting everyone know that we're recovering. Europe, the Eurozone, is out there, France, Spain, letting everyone know they're coming out of this recovery. Meanwhile, their unemployment, their debt, and everything else is falling apart and collapsing, and unemployment is going up. But they're telling everyone that everything is recovering. And of course, this is propaganda. So right now, if this is true, just like I said, if unemployment really dropped to 7%, because we have to go back in time, and I believe when this time last year, I think unemployment was around 7.8%, we should have more retail sales. We should have more people owning homes, because of course this would make sense. But if we really look at it, U.S. home ownership is back down to, I think, pre-bubble levels. The federal government's aggressive intervention in the housing market, which eventually included a $188 billion taxpayer bailout of mortgage finance giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, was supposed to increase the percentage of Americans who own their homes. The rate of home ownership at the end of November was down 65.3%. According data released December 20th by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. This is the same level of home ownership that Americans enjoyed in 1996 before the federal government stepped in to help. So what does this tell us? Who are the people buying these homes? Well, it's not Americans, because what do we know? We know that mortgage applications are plunging. We understand that sales are declining at this time, and the biggest buyer of homes are made with cash, about 60%. So the 60% people are investment companies, hedge funds, foreigners, people who are not here living in America, who were hit with this collapse during 2008. Because we have to remember, most of these people are unemployed, underemployed, have bad credit, foreclosed on their home, had short sales, and right now the Fed is buying up all the real estate from the banks at $45 billion, or if you want to split it in half, it's $42.5 billion every single month from the banks. We also know that Wells Fargo, Citibank, Bank of America, 1-800 East Coast Mortgages has laid off thousands of people from their mortgage companies. And I've reported this in my other reports. This was back in August, September, and into October. And they've laid off all these people. Why? Because Americans are not purchasing homes. This is not a housing recovery. This is an illusion, and the statistics and the facts prove it. It just shows you from the retail sales, from the housing sales, from the automobile sales, it makes sense. Yeah, they can fake it by saying, oh, GDP is up, blah, 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 because we channel stuffed the dealerships, we channel stuff the retailers, manufacturers are producing. But guess who's holding all this? Well, the dealerships and the retail stores. And this is why they're very nervous right now. And we're going to see many of these businesses close down coming up in 2014. And we have to remember what's coming in 2014. The debt ceiling debate again. The Fed says they're going to taper in January. Yes, they might start. They might say, oh, look, we did the first taper, but you're going to see an event occur that allows them to pump up QE. And I am not the only one saying this. Peter Schiff is saying this now. Mike Maloney is saying this now. There are many people out there saying that they're going to all of a sudden do a 360 and they're going to start pumping in more QE. And the only way they can do this is with some type of an event to occur to show that the economy is collapsing. And this is what we're going to see. Okay, now we understand that for all this, if we have to take a step back for a second, we understand that DHS was put into place to go after those people who are a threat to the government. And this is why we have the NSA spying. This is why we have the fusion centers. This is why DHS has purchased billions of rounds of ammunition. This is why DHS has ordered tanks. This is why DHS has been giving grants to local police authorities, trying to integrate them into the DHS model. This is why you see the police looking like military armed unit. This is why DHS has ordered uniforms to unify everyone in DHS right now. This is why the Real ID system has been put in place, and they want to federalize your license. So this way they can have a federal database and keep an eye on every single person. Set up checkpoints so when you have to go through state to state or county to county, you will have to show your ID and give a checkpoint. And they're going to give this information to Canada and Mexico. And we can see why this is all being done right now. And the only way they can push this forward is they need the NDAA 2014. And of course, President Obama signed it. And this allows the president to say, listen, I believe he's a terrorist. I believe he's a terrorist. There is no due process. They can pick up anyone they want, throw them in prison for 1 year without evidence, without a lawyer defending you, and this is why they are pushing this forward. Now, the next step in this, and of course this is stuffed into the NDAA, the NDAA now legalizes the use of propaganda on the U.S. public. Now, what they're saying is the U.S. government just gave itself permission to lie to the American people. So now they don't have to tell you the truth. They can make up anything they want to make you believe that this is the right thing. And there has to be no facts whatsoever. It is all propaganda. And this goes on to say the newest version of the National Defense Authorization Act includes an amendment that would legalize the use of propaganda on the American public. The amendment proposed by Mark Thornberry, he's a Republican from Texas, and Adam Smith, a Democrat from Washington, passed in the House last Friday afternoon, would effectively nullify the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948, which explicitly forbids information and psychological operations aimed at influencing U.S. public opinion. And here is the reason why they said they needed to do this. Thornberry said that the current law ties the hands of America's diplomatic officials, military, and others by inhibiting our ability to effectively communicate in a credible way. You mean just telling us the truth wouldn't be good enough? Instead, they need propaganda lies because you know what is coming, just like I know what is coming. The collapse of this economy, the takeover of the United States, martial law, DHS, troops in the streets, people being rounded up. We understand that this is happening. The State Department and Pentagon can go beyond manipulating mainstream media outlets and directly disseminate campaigns of misinformation to the U.S. public right now because of this is now law. And they have the ability to do this, and they're going to start doing this because we know what is coming next year. So Michigan and other counties, but the state of Michigan saw this, and you know what? They said, we are nullifying the NDAA right now. And they nullified the NDAA indefinite detention. Michigan Governor Rick Snyder signed into law yesterday SB 0094. The bill nullifies Section 1021 of the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act. Michigan joins other states who have thought to nullify the NDAA's controversial indefinite detention clause. And this needs to be done in every state because this is the only way to push back on the federal government. And there is an organization out there called PANDA, and you can go to their site and take a look. They are fighting in every state to nullify NDAA. And the NDAA needs to be re-signed every year. That's why it's the NDAA 2012, the NDAA 2013, and they keep adding more and more amendments to this. And you can see one of them is the Propaganda Amendment. Now, how do we know that things are getting worse here in the U.S.? Well, and how else do we know that the Constitution absolutely means nothing at this point? A U.S. judge rules NSA phone surveillance program is absolutely legal. What does this tell us? Well, they found a judge. Obama administration, Department of Justice found a judge. They found some information on him by spying on him. That's what the NSA is there for. And they used it to blackmail this judge. And this judge went ahead and said, you know what? Looks good to me. It's pretty legal. And if you really look at it, and let me just read the Fourth Amendment first. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, which means you cannot do any type of search anywhere on houses, papers, and effects. That means everything else. And it cannot be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause. So you need some type of cause. And they have to go to the judge, and they have to get a warrant. And this has to be supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Well, they're seizing my information. But a United States federal judge said Friday that the National Security Agency controversial bulk phone data collection program isn't against the law. And the judge who decided this is U.S. District Judge William Pauley. Judge Pauley admitted in a decision penned in the Southern District of New York court that the NSA vacuums up information about virtually every telephone call to, from, or within the United States, but that no evidence exists that the spy agency abuses this program to spy on people without ties to terrorism organizations. So they suck up all phone calls. And how do they get who's a terrorist and who's not? They have to look through all the information. Well, I'm sorry, that is against the Fourth Amendment. And this goes on to say, there is no evidence that the government has used any of the bulk telephone metadata it collected for any purpose other than investigating and disrupting terrorist attacks, Pauley wrote towards the end of his 54-page ruling. Because the NSA's aggregation of metadata constitutes an invasion of privacy and an unreasonable search, it is unconstitutional under the Fourth Amendment. And this is the ACL saying that this is what they believe. And they're also saying that the call tracking program also violates the First Amendment because it vacuums up sensitive information about associations and expressive activity. But Judge Pauley said that he acknowledged in his ruling that the program does indeed slurp up massive amounts of sensitive data, but insisted abuse has been infrequent and excusable given the advantage of the alleged counterterrorism tool. So he's pretty much saying that don't worry, the NSA is monitoring themselves, and they only use this for terrorism, and they're really not looking at anyone else's information. But I'm sorry, the Fourth Amendment doesn't say that. It doesn't say, oh, for this information or for that information. It says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. They need to get a warrant, and they have to show probable cause. They are taking my information without my permission. This is completely unconstitutional. You can tell this judge was compromised, blackmailed, and you can tell by his writings it makes no sense whatsoever when you read the Fourth Amendment. Now, we understand that Obama administration and the powers that be were never going to let the NSA disappear. Actually, they're going to increase surveillance on the people because we are getting closer and closer to the collapse. And this is why they've been using facial recognitions. This is why they've been using the fusion data centers. This is why they've been creating social profiles, because they are putting people on certain lists, because when the time comes, they understand that they have the ability and they will need to go after those people who are a direct threat to their power, and they cannot let these people just roam free and create organizations to create some type of revolution to overthrow these people who are in power right now. Now, Dave Hodges wrote an interesting article, What You're Going to Do When They Come For You, and he broke it down into phases of what is going to happen. In phase one, they're going to preemptively remove dissident leaders. If martial law government determined that the population might rise up, it would be prudent to remove the potential dissident leaders. How do you know if you are a potential target for immediate elimination once martial law is declared? The short answer is that you cannot be certain. Former NSA agents, the late A.C. Griffith, once stated that we are all assigned a threat matrix score and categorized on the NSA's ability to track your movements, rate your web surf habits, track your proximity to other known dissidents through cell phone movement matching, and quantitatively and qualitatively monitor your electronic communications. Now, how are they going to do the roundups, and what form is this going to take? Well, if we look back at the Boston Marathon bombings, martial law troops invaded Boston and provided us with a DHS version of roundups. The DHS oppressors came in the early morning hours. The perimeter of the city block was sealed off by ground troops, and an armored personnel carrier, a dozen or so stormtroopers, would approach a house and empty the house of its inhabitants without allowing any time to change or the opportunity to bring any personal items. And what else are they going to do when they round these people up? Of course, they're going to do the same thing they did in Nazi Germany. They're going to separate family members because they don't want people talking. They don't want family members together. And this is another phase, the disposition of family members. Your family members will be separated by the authorities as a prelude to sending you to their detention facilities. And that means that men will go to one facility and women will go to another. Children will have their own facility awaiting them as well. Remember, the state owns your children, and they have declared so in their Agenda 21 documents. Now, here's an important point. The NDAA gives the authority for the president to arrest and detain as many people as he deems necessary without due process of law. This act allows for mass arrests and deportations to prison camps. When Obama signed the unconstitutional legislation, do you really think the government was never going to act upon this self-granted brand of tyranny? Executive Order 13603 and the Civilian Inmate Labor Program gives the president the authority to incarcerate and conscript individuals into labor brigades in which they will be forced to work in slave units. So we can see how this is completely playing out, and we understand why they will be doing more spying than they have ever done before, because we understand that they've already put everything into motion. The Fed is going to taper. They understand that the economy is collapsing. Their event is set in motion. Their martial law, everything has been set in motion. And what's interesting, and since I'm going over this article that Dave Hodges wrote, if you listen to Dr. Garrow, which he interviewed, he also had information that there is some type of coup in the works to overthrow the government right now. And the military does have 3 to 5 nukes, and they did explode one off the coast of South Carolina. And Dr. Garrow was confirming this, and this was a signal to Obama, listen, the military is still here, and they will fight if necessary. And we can see by Obama's actions where he's removing hundreds of military officers, especially the high-ranking generals that control the nuclear arsenal, because they are controlling this right now and keeping it away from the Obama administration, and there is some infighting going on right now. Okay, now, we understand that this is all being played out. Now, around the world, other things are starting to take place, and the U.S., of course, this all fits into the collapse because for the U.S. to maintain what they have right now is they need to maintain and control the Middle Eastern countries, Africa, and keep China set back off of becoming the next reserve currency. And every place China goes, we notice the central bankers, U.S. government, the Eurozone, and all the private Western central bank countries seem to end up in the same exact place. Now, we see in Turkey right now, they are having major problems. The Turkey military says it will not get involved with a political crisis. 3 lawmakers, including a former minister, resigned Friday, and there is rioting going on right now. And over 5,000 people are reportedly rallying in Istanbul. Thousands of demonstrators have taken to the streets in Turkey demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Erdogan, and they want his removal right now. And we can see that Turkey is definitely under the control of the central bankers' U.S. government. It is in a strategic location, and we can see what is happening. They are losing control in that country. Also, in the Ukraine, what happened there is that Ukraine was deciding to go with the EU or Russia, and they decided to go with Russia, and all of a sudden we saw riots break out. And this was the central bankers' U.S. government fanning the fire, the flames in that country to try to overthrow the government in that area. And the Ukraine came out and said, listen, we don't want any more foreign people in here because we realize that you people are causing these protests. And the central bankers' U.S. government has done this in Syria. It has done this in Egypt. It has done this in Yemen. It has done this in Libya. It has done this in Lebanon. It has done this in Iraq. And it has done this in every single country. So they have the ability to fan the flame of riots and protests, try to make a revolution to overthrow the government so the U.S. can come in, put the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, and sell all their natural resources using the U.S. dollar. And this is why all this happened throughout all of these different countries. But the U.S. is losing control right now because they are very thinned out militarily wise in all of these countries. And we are seeing a lot of this starting to take its toll. And right now, one of the main places that the U.S. government is going, because China is there, and again, they are pumping in billions of dollars into the infrastructure of China. So, of course, France is there. They're in Mali because they want their gold, because Germany wants their gold back, and France had no gold. So, the private Western Central Bank needs to go in there and, look for some gold, because France was the country holding it, and the U.S. was also the other country holding it. And France is also in the in Central Africa, and right now the U.S. is sending troops into Sudan. Of course, we have troops stationed in Italy, ready to go across the Mediterranean and move right into Sudan. And of course, the South Sudan's government is ready for a ceasefire with rebels. China is on the side of the rebels this time, and the U.S. is on the side of the government. And of course, the U.S. said, listen, the United States, the Obama administration said, listen, if the South Sudan government falls and is overthrown in a coup, the United States is going to cut off aid to the country. Of course, they will lose the ability to sell the natural resources using the U.S. dollar, so they're no longer going to give aid, and they'll start, sanctions and all other different things that go on when they don't get their way. And right now, the U.S. State Department official is saying we continue to call on all sides of the conflict to work through their differences peacefully and democratically, because they realize the rebels are gaining ground, they're capturing oil wells, and they're pushing forward. And this is a battle that the U.S. will most likely lose in this area. Now, Syria has signed the first ever offshore oil deal with Russia. Syria has signed an agreement with Russia Oil um, gas company for joint exploration off the Mediterranean coast. The contract will enter into effect immediately despite U.S. and European sanctions against Syria. And Syria is one of Russia's last Middle East strongholds and serves as a base for the Russian Navy. And also, we have to understand that Russia has made a deal with Egypt also, where they're allowing them to use their port in Alexandria, and they're also made deal with Egypt to purchase their weapons and get aid from Russia since they had a falling out with the U.S. And Saudi Arabia is also doing the same thing. They're building up their Gulf army right now, and they are looking at China and Russia and making deals to hedge their bets against the collapsing dollar. Now, we understand that some type of cyber attack is going to happen, and I just saw on the Hagman and Hagman site, his insider DHS Rosebud has come out again saying that there's going to be some type of cyber attack and some type of martial law, and I completely agree with that there is going to be something happening come 2014. And this goes on to say that they're very worried about cyber terrorism on the aircraft. The threat of cyber terrorism poses a major risk to aircraft systems every time they enter an airport. And this is coming from a senior Boeing executive. And when I was reading this and reading this report, I was thinking back to the memos that were being received by the airlines. And these memos, if you remember, were about warning about terrorists taking dry runs on the planes. Now, of course, they're coming out, and Boeing is making this statement that a cyber terrorism threat is on the airlines because the airlines are at very big risk because of all their electronics and the Wi-Fi the internet connections, and they are very big risks. And I'm seeing, and if you put these two together, they can use this to say that these terrorists have taken control of these planes now by using some type of connection through the internet and using a cyber attack on the airlines. And this is why we're seeing these airlines fly into buildings or into other places or carrying a dirty nuke or who knows what. But that just made me think of that when I saw this report. And this goes on to say that planes are at risk every time they enter an airport because of the number of electronic systems. They begin sharing information with the situation, and the situation will cause a lot of issues. And we can see how they're moving this and playing this into the cyber attack theme that is going to hit the infrastructure, the power grid, the financial stock market, the banks, and we can see how this is all moving into the main false flag that is coming. Now, there is a U.S. general who is calling for massive march on Congress, and I have to refer back to the Dr. Garrow interview with Dave Hodges that said that, yes, the military is planning something. They are planning some type of coup or civil war or revolution, whatever you want to call it, and they are planning to do something. And right now, Major General Paul E. Vallely explained that that in the absence of leadership in the White House and Congress, they need to do something. And he goes on to say that I'm not even sure our traditional process will straighten out our government out in time to save us. And he said processes like impeachment simply won't happen. He said doing nothing is not an option because Washington won't fix itself and hope is not a strategy. We need to get off our derrieres, march at the state capitol, march in Washington. He said, make citizen arrests. He said, when there are those who are conducting treason, violating the Constitution, violating our laws, it should not be overlooked. When you have a president and his team who don't care about the Constitution, they will do anything they can to win. And we can see how this is being set up right now. And looking at everything, looking at all the indicators that I've been reporting on with lone wolves out in the U.S., where DHS right now is bringing in terrorists by the busload through immigration. And a lot of these terrorists are refugees, and they are bomb makers, and they have lost track of them. And this goes on to say that, yes, several dozen suspected terrorist bomb makers, including some believed to have targeted American troops, may have mistakenly been allowed to move to the United States as war refugees, according to the FBI agents. A program that gives coveted immigrant green cards to wealthy foreigners investors was so susceptible to fraud and abuse that it was used by Iranians, Iraqis, Syria, Al-Qaeda groups within these countries, that they cannot keep track of the amount of people. And let me just say, this is to make everyone believe that the next attack is going to be some type of terrorist threat. And they're going to blame it on a country. It's going to be terrorists within that country to make us believe that the country now is coming after us. It will allow us to blame the collapse on these people. It will allow us to create the bail-ins within the financial system. It will allow the banks to close. It will allow the president to declare martial law. And right now, from everything that we know of, that there are lone wolves running around in this country. Obama understands the military is going to try something. We understand that Janet Napolitano said not if but when some type of cyber attack or natural event occurs, not if but when it occurs, it will bring down the power grid infrastructure. It will bring down the banking systems. It will put people into darkness. And this whole entire thing with DHS supporting those people and bringing other people into this country lays the foundation of what the American people are going to believe. And we can see all of this formulating right now. Of course, now with the NDAA and the propaganda amendment, it allows them to lie even more. Not like they weren't lying before, but now they can push the lying forward, and they never have to use facts. They never have to say, oh, let me correct this. This was not true. And this is what has been used in other countries, and now we are falling into the same exact thing. And we can see how this is all being planned. The FBI, CIA's, Al-Qaeda operatives, which was created by the CIA, will be roaming around the United States. They are setting up the next event. They understand that this is going to be most likely chemical, dirty nuke, cyber attack, or it could be some type of natural disaster that they create by exploding something, maybe creating an earthquake or something like that. Who knows? But they do have the ability to do this. And we have to remember that all of this is going to be done to do one thing, and that is to lock down the United States because of the collapse and bring us to war with other nations to cover up what is happening. And we all need to be ready and prepared for what is coming. And you need to make plans with your children if they are in school and you are at home. If they hear that there's been some type of disaster or they hear that something is going on, you need to make some type of meeting place. And this is what I'm doing with my children, and not let them go to that safe place that they're going to bring them. And their parents will come for them later. I believe that everyone needs to make some type of plan to be ready for what is coming. And of course, when martial law comes into effect, you're going to see these DHS troopers coming out of the woodwork, and they will be all over towns and cities. I think their major locations will be the main cities because that will be the hardest to control. When the lights go out and the power is not working and explosions are happening all over, you're going to see people freak out. Riots are going to be in the street, and you also need a way to protect your family and a way to get out of the area that you're in if you're close to a city. And you need to be prepared with batteries, medicine, even a Wall Street um, financier was saying that you should have some type of prepping because he sees a collapse coming. He sees that things are not going well, and we've been hearing this for quite a while. But I think we're reaching the end game point at this time because there is way too much and too much evidence that is coming out that this is going to happen because we can see from China and Russia where the yuan and China has been making deals all over the globe. The United States has been losing control of the Middle East, losing control of South Africa. They're spreading the forces thinner and thinner. Afghanistan, they want to, maintain the forces in Afghanistan. They're having a problem there, and we see the pivot to Asia, where the U.S. and other central, private Western central nations are setting up for war with China. There was already an incident within the air defense zone, and we see the Eurozone completely collapsing. And we saw this back in 1929, where Europe was collapsing. There was reporting that Europe is not doing well. They were in a recession/depression. United States is fine. We are seeing the same thing happen again, where they're reporting that Europe is in a recession/depression, high unemployment, but here in America, of course, the stock market, just like in 1929, is at all-time new highs. Right now, the Fed is pumping in tons, billions and billions and billions and billions of money every single month. These new draconian laws are taking away all the constitutional rights, of which at least that's what the government believes, but nothing overrides the Constitution because that is the law of the land, and they can make up any law they want, but it doesn't override it. But they're doing this to make themselves feel better about what they're going to do to the American people. So listen, we all need to be prepared. We all need to be ready. And like I've always said, be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Hey, thanks a lot for listening, everyone. Thank you.